All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for joining us for today's A Month of Service presentation of I Need Criminal Legal Representation. What are my options? My name is Nia Murray. I am the Programs Coordinator with Neighborhood Recovery Community Development Corporation, and we are one of the partners in the A Month of Service collaboration. Also included is the City of Houston's Department of Neighborhoods, and joining us today is Ms. Myra Hippolyte. Also, our presenting partner is represent or on behalf of the Houston Bar Association. We have Mr. Chris McKinney, who's going to be giving our information, professional information here for you today. But also included in the partnership is Lone Star Legal Aid, the Earl Carl Institute, Houston Volunteer Lawyers, Harris Central Appraisal District, and the Harris County Tax Assessor Collector's Office. And together we make up A Month of Service. And basically what A Month of Service is a collaboration of these 8 different organizations. We come together on a monthly basis and offer a variety of different workshops, resources, information to the Houston and Harris County community regarding asset protection, asset building, maintaining of generational wealth, as well as community empowerment. So there's a series of different legal workshops that are sponsored by the Houston Bar Association that we offer. So for any attorneys that are joining us where you see a course number outside of our meeting topic, then you have the opportunity to take advantage of a free CLE credit for participating in these A Month of Service workshops. So definitely want to take advantage there. But the information that we do present and provide for you all is considered to be information for educational purposes only. It is not to be considered legal advice. However, we do encourage you to reach out to our civil legal service partners if you do find yourself in need of any free or low cost legal services to reach out to our legal service partners. But today, we are going to be providing you all with some information on criminal legal representation. Last month, we did the civil legal representation presentation. This time, we're going to venture into the criminal side. A lot of people don't know where do I go, who do I talk to, what exactly does a criminal attorney represent you for, and what's included, what are my responsibilities, what do I have to do, what's the timeline, all of those kinds of questions that people ask in the moment but don't know what to do prior to. So we're here to get you that information. We ask that you share the information with anyone that you also may find the information to be beneficial. We do record these sessions as well as broadcast live on our social media platform at Amos Houston TX. So feel free to, here's an opportunity to ask whatever questions that it is that you may have of the legal professionals that we have here. But again, this is for educational purposes only. It is not legal advice. Please feel free to type your questions into the chat. If you are joining us on Facebook, we ask that you type your questions or your comments into the comment section, and we'll definitely make sure that we get your question read aloud. We do want to remind you again that it is being recorded and broadcast live. So we do ask that you keep your questions to be as general as possible, to not divulge any personal detail information. My child so-and-so was arrested on this day and we live here. Please do not give any of that kind of information out, and just keep those questions as general as you possibly can. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and introduce our partner and our presenter for today, and we will move right on into the presentation. So Ms. Myra, would you like to introduce yourself first?
Thanks, Ms. Nia. Thank you, Mr. McKinney. Good afternoon. My name is Myra Hippolyte, and I work with the City of Houston Department of Neighborhoods Office of Neighborhood Engagement under the direction of Division Manager Paul Green. On behalf of Mayor Sylvester Turner and Director Takasha Francis, we want to welcome you to the Month of Service Partnership. This partnership is all about giving you back free information to all the Houston, Harris County, state of Texas community. And you know what? It even looks like other communities throughout other states and other countries are watching many of our virtual workshops. So we want to welcome you also. This is all about making sure that when you're going through a stressor in your life, like what we're talking about today, we're talking about, okay, I need some legal advice. Where do I look for? What do I need to talk to? This information, one time or another, somebody that you know or you yourself will need some assistance or some legal advice. And this is what we're giving you. You'll be stressed, you'll be sweating, you'll be breathing hard, and then you'll forget everything that we've talked to you about. So this is so important that you come back. That's why it's so important that you come back a couple of times, or go to our Facebook Live site, or Instagram or YouTube, and keep watching it, getting educated. Because, you know, every time Nia and I come back and see another virtual workshop, we learn something new, and we're like, oh my gosh, you know. And we've done these since 2016, 17, Nia.
Yeah.
And we are continuously learning every time. We have such amazing professionals that are taking time out of their busy schedules to make sure that you're educated and you know what you need to do from step A to double X when you're going through a stressor. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day and stay safe.
Okay, Mr. McKinney, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, or you can move right on into your presentation?
Absolutely. Thank y'all so much for having me. And like y'all said, my name is Chris McKinney. I'm a criminal defense attorney here in Houston, Harris County, Texas. I love my job. I love speaking with new people, but most of all, I love walking people through this process. It's a scary process. It's not anything anyone is typically involved in. And so there are a lot of questions, and there are a lot of different answers that whenever you type in your question into Google or ChatGPT or whatever, you got a lot of responses, and you don't know what to trust. And so the whole point of today is to give you the information that you need in order to make an informed decision about what may be one of the most decisions you make in your life. Because facing a criminal case is scary. Not a lot of people want to admit that they are even facing criminal charges, and they're too embarrassed to ask. And so this is an opportunity to ask those embarrassing questions with the anonymity of the internet, as well as just to listen, to start piecing things together so that you have the resources, so that you have the tools in order to make the decision that you need to make that is best for you, your family, and most importantly, your future. So let me get into the screen share and let me know if that is, are we up?
Not yet. Hit the green button.
Oh, I actually have to press the share button. There we go. All right. So like I said, I'm a Harris County based criminal defense attorney. My bar card allows me to practice in whatever court across the state of Texas, as long as it is a state matter. We also dabble in federal matters as well. But I kind of want to focus simply on hiring a lawyer in general, not talking about any specific situation. And so just a little bit about me while I have you here. So again, criminal defense attorney here in Texas. I am board certified in criminal law. I'm also part of the National College for DUI Defense faculty, and I'm a former Harris County, Texas prosecutor who began in the misdemeanor division, wound up in the felony division, and then left the office to practice criminal defense. So I've been a lawyer now for almost 11 years, and for board certified for about 5 of those 11 years. And all of that experience, all of that knowledge, all of the trainings that I've given, all the knowledge that I gain, now I get to use to help people out who are in tough situations like you may be right now. So how can a criminal defense lawyer help you? Well, like we were talking about, the entire criminal atmosphere is something people aren't really familiar with. They don't know who to ask. They don't know what questions to ask. They don't know where to turn. Okay. Now, a lot is riding on the line whenever a criminal case is filed against somebody, whenever an arrest is made, even whenever there's an investigation into acts or alleged acts that somebody has done. And so there is a lot riding on it, because if you take a criminal conviction, if you take the easy way out, you represent yourself and you say, you know what, DA, you know what, judge, I did it. Whatever you say it is that I did it. I'm guilty. Here's my signature, here's my fingerprint, here are my photograph in a mugshot. I did it. And then years on down the road, you start applying for housing, you start trying to get that job. You start going into different spheres of our neighborhoods, and you find out having a criminal conviction matters. What people think of you based upon your prior criminal history, even if you were 17, 18-year-old, whenever it happened, they still think differently about you. And so the important thing to do is to get ahead of all that, so you don't find yourself in that situation years on down the road saying, well, I wish I would have known this, or I wish I would have known that. And so this presentation is going to focus on giving you the tools that you need to, again, put yourself in the best position moving forward. Now, to the internet, what your lawyer wears apparently makes a difference. If your lawyer looks like this or has these types of shoes, you're going to jail. Just go ahead and take a plea. And it matters who goes into court, talks to the DA, talks to the judge, okay? And it matters what they say, how they say it, what experience that they have, and their track record. So if you want to take it from the internet, apparently what your shoes look like matters, but really it's going to be about experience. It's going to be about resources. It's going to be about time. It's going to be about compatibility. That really matters in the attorney-client relationship. And so this talk is going to talk about 5 different things. One of those is explaining the way someone can be entangled in the criminal justice system outside of just simply what we know about someone being arrested. You should know when you should hire a criminal defense attorney and where to look for one. You want to understand the benefits of employing a dedicated criminal defense lawyer and determine whether or not you qualify for a court-appointed lawyer if you can't hire one yourself. And then we're going to assess a criminal defense attorney's credentials. And we're also going to be looking out for the pitfalls and painful lessons that are associated with some of these attorney-client interactions. And whenever I go and start talking about these things, I don't want you to think that every single criminal defense lawyer is out there to get you. There are people out there who care. And just like there are good people and bad people in every single profession, the legal profession is no different. But it's going to be up to you to determine which ones are telling you the truth and which ones don't really have your best interest in mind. So how do we even wind up in the criminal justice system? Well, outside of the obvious, you get arrested. Your loved one gets arrested, that the police believe that there is probable cause to believe that your loved one or you have done something illegal, something against the traffic code, something against the penal code or some other provision of the law that allows the police to arrest you. This is going to be the most common way that people wind up in the criminal justice system. And whether the arrest is justified or unjustified, that's going to be for the courts to determine and the courts to sort out later on. Well, even if you don't get arrested, you could still wind up in the criminal justice system as the target of an investigation. And what I mean by this is some of the time there isn't enough facts for the police to arrest someone. So they continue gathering those facts. They gather evidence. They start talking to witnesses. They start gathering videos. They start going through all the forensic evidence. And they start piling on pieces of evidence that piece together what they may believe is a crime, a criminal offense. And so sometimes it takes the police time to put together all of these pieces. And at that time, they may be reaching out to you for a statement. And that statement is typically voluntary. And if you are being asked to give a voluntary statement, you have the ability to ask for a lawyer. You have the ability to ask for help. And so it's not simply whenever an arrest happens that you need to be looking out about whether or not you should hire a lawyer, but it could be these kind of innocuous situations, or at least situations that the police kind of paint to be nothing big, nothing special, nothing that's going to get you in trouble. But the fact of the matter is, police can use any tactic that they want in order to get something from you. Whether it's an incriminating statement, you to turn over documents or other pieces of evidence, they are not working for you. The only person working for you is you, and the only other person working for you is going to be the lawyer that you choose. Now, going along with an investigation, sometimes cases go in front of a grand jury. And a grand jury is a group of citizens from the county, picked just like any other juror. But instead of hearing the facts of one single case, they hear dozens and hundreds of thousands of cases every single term to determine whether or not there's probable cause for an arrest warrant to be issued for someone. So if the police or the DA presents a case to a grand jury for that probable cause determination, that could lead to an arrest warrant for you. Now, grand jury processes are secret, but there are things that a criminal defense attorney can do to get ahead of the investigation, to get ahead of the grand jury process, and to present your side. Because at the grand jury, there was only one side of the investigation being revealed, and that's going to be the police side, the DA side, or the state side, however you want to look at it. Your side is never going to be presented unless you have someone speaking for you, presenting evidence to the grand jury on your behalf that spins the evidence your way, or says something that maybe the police investigation didn't reveal that is helpful for you and helpful for that grand jury in either making a determination of probable cause or not making that determination of probable cause. And finally, there can be a summons or a citation, which is a nice way of saying you get a polite invitation to come to court. Now, all of these other situations, the arrest, the grand jury, or warrant going out for your arrest, those are all compelled reasons why you have to come to court. A summons or a citation is something a little bit different than that. A summons or a citation just says, hey, Joe Blow, you have a court date coming up, and instead of arresting you, we're giving you this polite notice to show up to court on this date, at this time, at this location. If you don't do it, well, maybe we're going to have to issue that warrant out for your arrest. But in the meantime, since this isn't such a big deal, it's not against public safety or anything like that, we want you to come to court and start the process. Now, a lawyer can come with you to that court date, respond to that citation, respond to that summons, and walk you through the process. And those court processes can be a maze. There are a lot of different things going on at a lot of different kind of checkpoints throughout the process. Now, the court processes typically start off with an arrest. And lawyers don't really get involved, and the law doesn't allow them to really get involved until after an arrest happens. And this is all based upon the Sixth Amendment protections that a person has. Now, you're probably asking yourself now, Chris, if I get pulled over on the roadside and the police ask me to submit to field sobriety tests, I'm just going to tell them, I want to talk to my lawyer. I want to get a bit of legal advice before I start doing that. Unfortunately, the way the law is interpreted, that right to have a lawyer doesn't accrue or doesn't happen. You aren't guaranteed that right until an adversarial process happens. And that adversarial process happens typically upon arrest. And that's whenever those constitutional rights start working for you. But until then, lawyers typically cannot get involved. The police do not have to allow you to talk to a lawyer before being arrested. Now, let's look at the Sixth Amendment, that kind of bedstone of American law as it relates to needing a lawyer. So the Sixth Amendment says, in all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy a right to a speedy and public trial by an impartial jury of the state and district wherein the crime shall have been committed, which district shall previously ascertain by law, and to be informed of the nature and cause of the accusation, to be confronted with the witnesses against him, to have compulsory process for obtaining witnesses in his favor. And here's the important part, why we're here today, and to have assistance of counsel for his defense. Okay, you are guaranteed a right to a lawyer, whether or not you can afford one or one has to be appointed to you. Okay, that is the bedrock of this particular amendment, is that if the state or if the government says that you have done something wrong and they have called you to answer for it, you are entitled to a lawyer to help you out of the situation, to do whatever's in your best interest, to fight for you, to fight for your freedom, to give you your life back. And like we talked about, it only accrues whenever you get arrested or you are subject to custodial interrogation. So let's talk about a custodial interrogation. So whenever a person is formally arrested, handcuffs go on, the police say you're under arrest for X, Y, or Z. Then let's say the police start asking you questions. Well, are you guilty of it? And you say, yeah, I'm guilty of it. That person deserved it, or I relish the feeling of taking all that money, or yes, and there are more drugs in my trunk. Okay, none of those statements are admissible based upon the way the law is written in terms of Miranda rights. Okay, Miranda rights that everybody knows, you know, you're under arrest, you can get a lawyer, you don't have to say anything, all of those things. If the police don't tell you those rights, it's not an automatic get out of jail free card. These charges are still going to happen. They are not going to release you from jail. That is not the magic words to get out of jail. Instead, if the police want to use any of those statements that you have made without them warning you of the legal consequences of what you are doing, those statements, those admissions of guilt or where the other evidence is, things like that, those things do not come into evidence. So right then, my admission that I did it or I'm guilty, no jury is going to hear that based upon the police not giving me those rights. And those rights are going to look like the right to remain silent, that these statements can be used against someone, that I have a right to a lawyer present so that they can advise me. And if I'm unable to employ one, meaning I don't have enough money or one's not available for me, I can get one appointed to me. And I can terminate the interview with the police at any time. All of these things are meant to protect a criminal defendant after they have been placed under arrest, whenever they may be subject to duress or coercion from the police. Okay? And it's important that a criminal defense attorney highlight these situations in which a person has given evidence against themselves that is in violation of the law. And a lot of people start talking about technicalities, that somebody got off on a technicality. Well, the police have to follow the law too. And them not following the law isn't a technicality, it's unlawful. The police have to follow the law just like we have to follow the law. And there are consequences in terms of what is admissible or inadmissible whenever the police fail to follow those policies, those procedures, and those laws. The other question is, do I have to talk to the police? And of course not. There are certain pieces of information that you do have to give them, like your identity and things like that. But other than that, you're under no obligation to talk to the police. And that's your Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. Okay. So typically the first portion of someone needing a lawyer is whenever a person is brought before the judge. And if you see on this little screen, just to the left of this person's face, there's a judge sitting there, there's a prosecutor sitting there, and then you can see that kind of everyone else who's being charged with a crime being brought before a judge. Now, this judge is telling that person of all the rights that they have, the right to remain silent, the right to have a lawyer, and all of those things. There was a prosecutor reading what they believe to be the facts or the probable cause for the arrest. And now there's even the ability for a person to have a public defender or appointed counsel at this process whenever talking about bonds. So kind of as a recap to see how we even get to this process, how we get in front of the judge. Well, let's say that there's a traffic stop. The police call to the DA for charges. The DA accepts those charges. The police then take that person down to the jail. They're going to be processed, which means that they are going to be photographed. They're going to be fingerprinted. Then they are going to see a magistrate, typically within 24 hours. In other portions across the state, it's 48 hours, but here in Harris County, we like to get it done a little bit quicker. That person is going to have a bond set, meaning they either have to pay money to get out of jail, or they're released on their own personal recognizance or part of a general order bond. Meaning in those two situations, the PR bond or the GOB bond, they're going to get out with simply the promise that they're going to stay out of trouble and that they're going to come back to court. And that court date is going to be set typically a week down the road for them to hire a lawyer. They're going to be given some paperwork with their court number, their cause number, and the date that they are supposed to come back. And then they'll typically be processed out within 12 to 48 hours. Right now, we're looking at usually like a 24 to 32 hour window of someone going into jail and then being processed out. Okay, so we've talked about how we get to court. And once we get into court, we're going to have a process called arraignment, meaning it's that first setting in which a person goes in front of the judge. The charges are read in front of the judge that they are assigned to. And again, if the warnings haven't been given to that person charged with a crime, the judge is going to tell them, you have a right to counsel. You have a right to remain silent. You don't have to talk to anybody. You can terminate any interview. And if they don't have a lawyer at that time, then the judge can give them a reset or a continuance to find a lawyer. The best course of action, however, because a lot of things are going on at this time, is that a person should be showing up with a lawyer, because at this first important setting, they're talking about conditions of bond or rules that a person has to abide by in order to remain free. And if a person doesn't show up with a lawyer, they have no one fighting for them. And the state and the judge can place whatever bond restrictions that they want on that person that may be warranted or even unwarranted. The fact of the matter is, you should show up to court with a lawyer or be looking to have one appointed to you at that first setting so that that lawyer can begin fighting for you. And that lawyer that you hire, that lawyer that is appointed to you, is going to be fighting for you throughout the entire process, telling the court that they represent you, requesting all of the evidence, evaluating all of the evidence, and hopefully placing you in the best position possible, which is to get your case dismissed. Okay, but not every case can be dismissed. There are consequences involved in the criminal justice system. And if you go in this process alone, or if you go in this process with a lawyer that may not be worth his salt, you could be facing some of those consequences. And those consequences that everybody knows about are imprisonment. And for misdemeanors and in felonies, it's different. For misdemeanors, you could be facing up to a year in the county jail and up to a $4,000 fine or both. For felonies, you could be facing on the lowest level felony, 180 days to 2 years in the state jail. For third degree felonies, 2 years to 10 years in prison. Or first degree felonies, having a range of punishment of 5 years to 99 years or life in prison. Obviously, capital felonies can be punished with life in prison or even the death penalty. Now, on top of imprisonment, you also have a conviction going on your permanent criminal record. Now, a lot of people come into my office and say, well, if I just take a conviction, Chris, doesn't it mean it'll just fall off in 7 to 10 years? No, that's absolutely not right. There are two types of background checks. One is one kept by the state and by the federal agencies. That is your permanent record. That is what the police will see whenever they pull you over, or if someone went to the district clerk's website or got an official background check from the state of Texas. Now, some background check agencies don't go back that far, and that's why people start believing that their record falls off, okay? Excuse me. Convictions for criminal offenses don't go away. They will be there forever. The only way for a criminal case to ever go away, to be erased or expunged from your record, is if it is dismissed or if you are found not guilty by a jury. And obviously, if you have a criminal background, it affects what type of employment you may have, and it affects how you do your job. Take, for example, someone who is a CDL driver, commercial truck driver, and they have a special license from the state of Texas that allows them to do that. If they take a DWI conviction, they cannot drive a commercial vehicle for 1 year. If they have additional intoxication offenses, it could result in a lifetime ban of doing what they do for a living, how they support their family, how they pay their bills, and everything that goes along with that. Okay. So there are also fines and financial repercussions in terms of what you owe the state, what you owe the county, what you owe the court, your ability to be licensed if you are facing a criminal offense other than a Class C misdemeanor. It affects your ability to be in finance. It affects your ability to be a teacher, to be a real estate agent, to be a doctor, to be a nurse. All of these things are affected, and that's why we have the dominoes in the background. All of these things are affected by even a pending criminal case. Obviously, a conviction has the ability to affect all of that as well. And then finally are the social stigmas associated with a criminal case and a criminal conviction. People look, unfortunately, and this isn't the way it should be, people look down on people with criminal records. They see them as bad, as dirty, and that's absolutely not true. People who sit down and talk with us and people who go out through the system are typically good, decent, law-abiding individuals who have just found themselves in a terrible situation after making a terrible mistake, let's say with too much drinking, or maybe going about a mental health issue in a way that the police didn't understand. And that's why they're facing criminal charges. And so, unfortunately, the way society has taught us and the way society looks at criminal cases, just accusations, let alone convictions, it puts people facing criminal charges at a disadvantage. Okay. And so the biggest question is, do I need to wait to be arrested before I look for a lawyer? And no, the answer is no. Because in situations where you're facing an investigation or a potential grand jury indictment or citations or summons, those are opportunities for a criminal defense lawyer to start poking around and start placing you in the best position possible for that future win, hopefully. Okay. So the other question is, couldn't I just do it by myself? Well, let me give you an example. Well, short answer is no. And here's why. At least you shouldn't. Back whenever I was at the Harris County DA's office, people would typically come into court, typically in misdemeanor cases, and they want to speak directly to the DA. Now, the DA can only do so many things for someone who is unrepresented. And that's only because the DA, the district attorney, the prosecutor represents the state of Texas. They do not represent Joe Citizen. They don't represent you. They don't represent your interests. They don't know anything about you. They have no duty to tell you the consequences of what you are about to engage in. So if you go into court and you ask the DA, give me an offer on my case, I don't want to mess with it anymore. I don't want to bother with being appointed a lawyer or hiring a lawyer or anything like that. Typically what will happen is you're only going to be offered a conviction. And again, talking about the consequences of a conviction, there are serious repercussions for those actions. And so my best advice is don't do it alone. Because if you get into a situation where you are against someone who knows what they are doing, they know the rules of the game, they know how to speak the language, and they are only there to represent the state and not you, then you are at a severe disadvantage. You are not coming out on top. You will most likely lose, not only in the short run, but also in the long run. So where does that leave you? You get someone who can go to bat for you. You get someone who can do battle with the DA's office. who has your best interest in mind, who has taken the time to sit down to learn about you, to learn about your specific situation, your family, your employment, your military background, your prior criminal history, your licensing. And that person can evaluate the facts, and they can try and put you, by evaluating the evidence, in the best position possible. So the importance of competent legal representation is that security. Okay. Now, I say competent legal representation because you can find a lawyer out there at, well, you can find any lawyer. There are all sorts of lawyers out there. There are good lawyers, there are bad lawyers, there are lawyers that don't care about people, there are lawyers that care too much about people, okay? But it's going to be up to you in order to sift through all of these lawyers and find the person who can do the best at these specific tasks, assessing your case, evaluating your case, seeing what strengths there are, what weaknesses there are. They can help you navigate the legal processes, all the ins and outs. They can protect your rights. They can start preserving evidence. They can build for you a strong defense. But most importantly are the last two, that they can give you strategic guidance because they have been there. They have done that. They have handled this type of case before in this particular judge's court or against this particular prosecutor, and they can advocate towards the best possible outcome. And again, that best possible outcome is going to be a dismissal or an acquittal in your case. And so it's important that we get attorneys involved early, because just like the picture says, the early bird gets the worm. The early bird isn't going to miss any opportunities. You aren't going to have a lack of guidance. You aren't going to be floundering about within the criminal justice system, not knowing what to do or what to say or what not to say. And you just won't know those things because you haven't been there before. And with delaying getting an attorney in these types of cases, you have a weakened defense. It limits the amount of time that is available to build that strong defense, that impenetrable defense, that defense that gets you off of the hook and back into freedom, back into your family's arms. But not only that, hiring a lawyer early on in the process also lessens the amount of stress because you have now turned this case over to someone else who has your best interest in mind. And so even though it's going to be in the back of your mind, it's going to be something that you're thinking about, that there are potential consequences hanging over your head, at least you know that you have given this problem to someone else. And that is now that person's burden to bear. But instead of you handling it, it's now in capable hands, okay? And that comes into play most in that custodial interrogation situation. Just by saying, I don't want to talk to you, police, and I want a lawyer, it solves a lot of problems. So we talked about what we're looking for in a lawyer, but where do we find one? Okay. And so there are a lot of places you can find lawyers. There are lawyers all down the street that we're on. There are lawyers across the state of Texas, and they're all good at different things. But whenever we focus on these 6 things, we can kind of narrow down the list of attorneys that are out there. First, reach out to family, reach out to friends, reach out to coworkers, reach out to people you trust as to who they've heard are good lawyers, who they heard are competent lawyers. Or if you have a family or if you have a friend or a coworker, someone that you trust, and they tell you, hey, Chris, I've been down this road before, and here's the lawyer that I used in my situation. He might be a good, at least or at least somebody to talk to who can point you in the right direction. There are also Bar Association referrals. So the Houston Bar Association has lawyers from across the spectrum that handle all sorts of different types of cases. And if you go to Houston Law Referral Service, they can also put you in contact with pre-screened lawyers. There are online directories, legal websites, legal aid organizations, and even Google that allow you the resources to pinpoint who's going to be the best for you in your particular situation. And so First, I'll go ahead and throw out Houston Lawyer Referral Service. So they have a website. You can just Google Houston Lawyer Referral Service. There's a telephone number, there are hours. There are lawyers who volunteer for this that are paid at a reduced or potentially even free cost to you. Okay, so they are a good resource to have. Now, whenever we start talking about online directories, you go to, let's say you are charged with a DWI, you go to the National College for DUI Defense. So an organization that specializes in DUI defense. You click on your home state of Texas, it takes you to a list of lawyers. And the lawyers, such as this handsome guy, will pop up. You can view their profile, view their website, and see how they are involved in this organization. And they have faculty member, a task force member, a general member. All of those things are going to be available to you. What I am telling you, this is not a plug for me. This is just a plug for every single piece of information that you can get. You should use to your advantage. We live in a digital world that has information overload. Use that information to your advantage in placing yourself in the best position possible with the best lawyer possible. The other thing you can do is go to the State Bar of Texas. You have the ability to search by practice area. You can put in criminal. You will get a list of lawyers that are in the primary practice area that you were looking for. You can click on their full profile and it will generate for you. The other thing you should know about the Texas Bar website are these little dots that are next to people's names. The two colors you need to worry about are green, which means everything is in line. This person is eligible to practice. In red, red means this person has been either disbarred, suspended, or that there is some type of disciplinary issue with them. For whatever reason, and you should investigate that on your own. So whenever you click on someone's profile, this will pop up. They will tell you where that person is located, when they were licensed, what area they practice on, what firm they work for, how many lawyers, their fees and their fee structures, what type of foreign language assistance that they have. They will tell you if they are board certified in a particular area of law. And they will tell you where they graduated from law school and if they have any advanced degrees after that, where that took place. And then right down here, what we were talking about, that disciplinary history. So there's no public disciplinary history. That means that person is eligible to practice law and they've never been in trouble with the state bar before. If someone has been in trouble with the state bar, that little area will pop up with the dates that were affected, and sometimes even a copy of a court transcript or a court filing about what went down. You can also go to the Texas Board of Legal Specialization website and find persons who specialize in this area. And again, it'll give you a lot of the same information that the Texas Bar has. Now, this isn't just for criminal law. If you had an estate question, there are lawyers who specialize in estate law or family law or business law or appellate law, and you can find one of those board certified lawyers under those tabs. Now, what's important about being board certified is that a person has been practicing for at least 5 years. They have a number of trials and a number of experience in the area that you are certified or specialized in. There is a questionnaire that is sent out to people they have worked with, worked against, or the judges that they have appeared before. And then there's also a test that they have to take. There's also a substantial requirement for continuing legal education, meaning there are enhanced requirements outside of being just a regular lawyer, that there are additional qualifications to get additional continuing legal education. You can also go to a lawyer's website, find out what they've taught about, what their experience is in this particular area. You can go to Google, type in their law firm, type in their names, see how they are reviewed, what kind of reviews are there. Now, whenever you go into Google and you type in, say, Houston DWI lawyer, and this is just a warning to you, or at least something you should be careful of. The way search engines work is that people who pay for sponsorships are going to be at the top of the list. And just because people are at the top of the list does not mean that they are the best lawyer for you. It just means that they get bumped to the front of the line whenever it comes to searches. And so I'm not saying that any of these lawyers that have paid for sponsorships are bad lawyers. I'm never going to talk mess about another lawyer. I'm just saying that this is an additional piece of information you should use in screening whether or not this lawyer is the best lawyer for you. Okay, and so there are general practitioners and then there are criminal defense lawyers. Now, general practitioners are kind of what the name suggests. They kind of do a little bit of everything, kind of like a Swiss Army knife. They dabble in real estate law, family law, business law, estates, bankruptcy law, and they have a broad knowledge base. Can they represent you? Absolutely. But is there a lawyer that can represent you better? Is there a key to your freedom? Okay. Now, criminal defense lawyers typically, some will branch out into other areas of law, but a lot of them stay and simply do criminal defense. They have a dedicated practice to protecting people's rights, to protecting people's freedoms. They are up to date on changes in the law, decisions made by courts recently that affect their clients' cases. They have extensive experience in criminal defense. And that extensive experience talks about, again, that insight is, I've gone up against this lawyer before, or this DA. I've been in front of this judge. I know what this judge is going to do. I know how this judge is going to treat your case and how fast we're going to move along. And I know what to expect in this situation. And finally, a dedicated criminal defense lawyer is going to have that network and the resources that are available to them that maybe a general practitioner might not. So access to experts, to rehab facilities if drugs and alcohol are an issue, and other resources that are specialized and focused solely on criminal defense. But are criminal lawyers only hired? Well, no. Well, we talked about earlier appointed lawyers, and appointed lawyers are there for individuals who don't have the resources, who aren't in a situation to hire a lawyer. Now, there is nothing wrong with appointed lawyers. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and come out and say that there is nothing wrong with having the court appoint you a lawyer. There are very good lawyers that represent people in appointed cases. Okay, this goes back to our Sixth Amendment right to have that protection of counsel whenever these adversarial proceedings are occurring. Okay, so is everyone entitled to an appointed lawyer? Well, no, you have to qualify for one. So how do you qualify for one? So whenever you are in Harris County and across courts throughout the state, they're going to be looking at a couple different things. One of those being the person who's accused of this crime, their income, what sources of income they have, what assets, what property they own, any outstanding obligation, any expenses that are necessary, anybody else who they have to support, and whether or not they have any other sources of income, such as a spouse that is available to them. And what the judge is trying to determine is whether or not this person has the resources to hire their own lawyer, or if they need a little helping hand in dealing with their case. Now, there isn't one real determination except for income that guarantees someone a appointed lawyer. And what they are going to be basing that off of is the federal poverty guideline. So if you are at or below this amount, you are presumed to be indigent, meaning you don't have the resources to hire a lawyer. People who are behind bars are also in jail are also deemed to be indigent, meaning courts typically appoint them a lawyer. So most of it is based upon a person's resources on whether or not they are going to be entitled to having the court appoint them a lawyer. And if a person is qualified to be appointed a lawyer, who is it going to be? Well, in most circumstances, it'll be one of two different things. One, it's the Harris County Public Defender's Office, or there are contract attorneys. Okay. Now, the public defender's office are government-funded organizations, meaning it is the county that is providing these lawyers to you. And the county has an office called the public defender's office. They are solely criminal defense attorneys, and they help out all the way throughout the process. Like we talked about before, whenever a person is brought before a judge and they are magistrated, there is a public defender there fighting for a person's bond. When a person goes in front of a judge in the actual criminal court, in the actual criminal case, well, then they may be appointed a public defender. This public defender acts just like a hired attorney. They work for that one person, along with a number of other cases, but they are working for that person. They don't work for the state. They don't work for the court. They don't work for the prosecutor. They work for you, the defendant. Now, if the public defender isn't appointed to your case, well, then there are some private attorneys who get on a list to be appointed, just like the public defender's office would be. And so there are lawyers like me. I can apply to be a contract attorney, or I can apply to be an appointed attorney. And based upon my qualifications, the board that reviews this will either say, yes, Chris is qualified, or no, he's not. If I'm not qualified, well, then I won't make the list. If I am qualified, they're going to say, how qualified are you? Are you qualified just to do misdemeanors? Are you qualified to do state jail felonies, third-degree felonies, second-degree felonies, first-degree felonies, capital felonies? And so the higher you get in terms of the seriousness of the crime, the more qualifications an appointed attorney has to have to even be put on that list. And the question that I hear a lot is, will I receive less than quality representation? The answer is no, you are not. Those are great lawyers that are on that list, okay? But just like there are individual differences in every single profession that we talked about, there are individual differences between the lawyers that are on there. And so sometimes you may get a lawyer with limited resources or limited time. But hopefully that is not the case. I think the appointed system in Harris County does a great job in terms of getting people the resources that they need to be successful in their cases. And the biggest thing that I want you all to take away from this is I want you to avoid pitfalls. I don't want you all to fall into any traps or to be caught off guard by anything in this process. Okay, that's the biggest disservice that I could do to you, is telling you what not to watch out for. Okay, the biggest thing that you need to do is research. I've given you a bunch of different places to look for a lawyer, but you are going to be responsible for doing the research on your own. Find out about the person who is representing you or has the potential to represent you. Make a list of people who are qualified to represent you, who you would want to represent you, and then find out more. Give them a phone call, set up an interview, sit down with them, okay? Because the biggest thing that you could do, the worst thing that you could do, is get into a relationship, a business relationship with someone and not be satisfied with what you get out of it. Take, for example, let's say I call up a random girl on the phone. My wife is going to be mad at me for this, but I call up a random girl on the phone. I ask her to marry me. She says yes. Whenever she gets to me, I see that, well, this isn't what I was expecting. And now that we're married, I have to live with this for the rest of my life. Okay, you're doing the same thing in hiring a lawyer. You are going to be dealing with someone who has an effect on the rest of your life. So do your research, make sure you know what you are getting into. The other thing is this lack of compatibility. Meet with a lawyer, talk with them. If you aren't feeling it with them, well, then if you are in the trenches with them later on, whenever it comes to court, and you don't trust them, well, you're going to have a problem, okay? And you're probably going to be looking for another lawyer. So go ahead, sit down, talk with them, see if you're even compatible. The other thing you should do is avoid lawyers that give you unrealistic promises. A lot of lawyers will say, I can get this case dismissed, or I can get you probation, or there's no way you would do more than this amount of time, okay? Some lawyers will say anything at all in order to get your business, to sign you up as a client. Not all lawyers, but some lawyers will make unrealistic promises to you in order to earn your business. Talk to a lawyer that is grounded, who has realistic expectations for your case, who can explain it like a lawyer. This is the worst case scenario. This is the best case scenario. What your case will look like, I don't know. I haven't seen any of the evidence. I need to evaluate the evidence. And once I've evaluated the evidence, then let's talk about what are the potential outcomes and what are realistic outcomes in your particular case. Again, do your research into whether or not this lawyer has any experience. I'm not talking about baby lawyers or lawyers who have just been licensed to practice law. Make sure that they are experienced in what you want them to do. Okay, look for that experience in the past jobs that they've had, and whether or not they've been teaching in this area or anything like that. Lawyers just coming out of law school are great lawyers, but they have a lot to learn whenever it comes to defending someone's life and their liberty. The other thing is time, whether or not your lawyer that you are hiring has enough time in order to dedicate to your case, to your defense, to your freedom, to your future. There are lawyers out there that have hundreds of cases. I'm not calling them bad lawyers. I'm just saying, if you are talking to a lawyer that has that many cases, is that lawyer, in your mind, going to have enough time in order to work for you, to work on your case, to answer your questions, to show up to court with you? Okay. Ask yourself these questions whenever looking at these lawyers. So the biggest things you can do to ensure success are sit down, meet with a lawyer in person, be wary of any specific guarantees for any specific outcomes, ask them about their fees, and get an agreement in writing. Okay, so here's a list of questions that you can ask and that you should ask in navigating conversations with lawyers. Talk about their experience. How many cases have you handled like mine? What are your qualifications? And then we start talking about realistic outcomes. What are the potential outcomes? What am I facing? How are we going to communicate whenever we talk about this case? Is your office open on weekends? Is there an answering service? Can I reach you by email? Do y'all text message? Things like that. Who will be working on my case? There are some firms out there that have dozens of lawyers working in a firm, but you want to know, is the person that is going to be working on your case the person that you're meeting with, or is it going to be passed off to someone else? Will I need to go to court? Will you go to court with me? What should I expect whenever I go to court? These are all great questions to be asking to prepare yourself for what's to come. Biggest thing you can do, ask for, I keep saying biggest thing, and they just keep getting bigger, but this is a big thing. Get an agreement in writing with a lawyer. If you have it in writing, you know what your expectations are for this lawyer, and this lawyer knows what to expect from you. It sets out all the terms of the agreement, what this covers, how long it's for, what the cost is, who's going to be handling the case, what about expenses, what if we get into a disagreement, how are those disagreements resolved? All of these things should be contained within the representation agreement. So ask them, how much is it for your service? Is this a flat fee? And typically in criminal cases, we deal in flat fee arrangements versus hourly, which is what you may see in, say, a family law issue or a civil issue, where they are billing you hourly, as opposed to a criminal defense attorney who may say, you know what, this is a DWI, we'll handle it for a flat fee of X. Okay, what does this representation cover? How much time do I have to pay? How much do you need to get started? Are you charging me every time we have to go to court? Well, what if I can't pay you? What do we do then? Are you going to kick me out as a client? Are you going to get off of my case? How do we resolve that? Does this fee that you are charging me include trial? What about answering any questions from my family? Okay. What if someone else pays the fee? And if someone else pays the fee, typically, all of our allegiance, all of the criminal defense attorney's allegiance, that allegiance lies in the person we are representing, not to the family, not to the friend, not who's paying the bill. Okay. And the ability for us to talk, unless you give us permission otherwise, we can only talk with you about the case unless you give us permission to talk to someone else. And that's what's important about the attorney-client relationship. It's confidential. Can we meet in person? How long will my case take? And obviously, don't rush into anything. Ask them for some time to think about it. Lawyers that don't want to give you the time to think about it, or they approach you in the hallway at the courthouse and offer you a sweet deal for a little bit of cash, just take some time, think about it. This is a big decision. Ask yourself, does this person have my best interest in mind? Okay. At the end of the day, I say a lot of bad things about some lawyers, but the majority of lawyers are good people. They truly care about the practice of law. They truly care about their clients, and they truly care about getting good results. I got into this profession because I wanted to help people. I wanted to make a difference. And I hope that giving you these nuggets of information provides you a guide, or at least gives you the information to give to someone else who may be in a situation who needs help out of it. Because helping people is what we as lawyers do. And if I can ever be of help or assistance of you, here's my contact information, my phone number, my email address. I even have a QR code now with my contact information. So if you need to save it, do so. I'm here for you, and I really appreciate your time. Thank you all so much.
All right. Thank you very much. Let me see if we've got any questions here in the chat. Here's an opportunity if you all would like to unmute yourself and ask questions directly of Mr. McKinney, please feel free to do so, or type your questions into the chat. I am also monitoring the comment section on Facebook. If you've got any questions, please feel free to type in there as well. But I do have a quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
During a criminal court case, and I've heard this a couple of times on a couple of different occasions, if you're in the middle of like a trial or something like that, and you feel like the attorney that you've got is not in fact representing you, is not responsive, does not return phone calls, you don't have any information, they're not responding, what do? Can you fire them in the middle of a court or a proceeding? Because I've heard judges say, no, you can't fire them because we're already in the middle of everything.
So it's a tricky position whenever you're down there, you're in battle, and you're fighting for your freedom in front of a judge, in front of a jury, in front of the DA. And so the short answer is you can fire a lawyer kind of midway through the process, but whether or not the judge will honor that's something different. Okay. And so if that does happen, there has to be something completely egregious in terms of a breakdown of the attorney-client relationship in order for a judge to let a defendant fire their lawyer. Okay, obviously everybody has a right to competent representation. If you go into trial and maybe I don't know if not returning a phone call or something like that rises to that level. But if your lawyer is showing up drunk or high or something, or something that interferes with providing competent representation, that's something someone can put on the record. And that can be the basis of that breakdown of an attorney-client relationship that allows the judge to act in a just way, which would be to provide you either a new lawyer or provide you an opportunity to obtain new counsel. But that new counsel is going to be in a rough spot if we're in the middle of trial, trying to play catch up or getting through everything that this lawyer who for the past year has been handling this case. So impossible? No. Difficult? Yeah, pretty darn.
So other than the fact that you're not even showing up or not even represent, or even responding when my life is on the line, that's not considered egregious enough.
Well, I know, and it sounds unfair at the time, but thankfully there are safeguards in place in terms of the appeal process and things like that. That I wouldn't say they assist, but they kind of assist too late in terms of lawyers who provide ineffective assistance of counsel. So there are remedies, and unfortunately, they're after the fact of getting a better resolution or a different outcome on your case if the level of representation that your attorney is providing is so deficient. So there are mechanisms out there, not only in the trial court, but also after that in the appeals process.
So someone wants to know, how do you handle a 16-year-old allegation?
A 16-year-old person or an allegation from 16 years ago?
Can you specify? Or if you'd like to unmute yourself,
Oh,
go
there we
ahead. I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
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 sir.
sir.
Hey,
Go right
hey,
ahead.
it's great information. It's a 16-year-old allegation.
Okay. And so even if an allegation happened 16 years ago, there can be obviously an allegation 16 years ago, memories have faded, evidence may be lost. And so it may be difficult for the state to prove a case like that. And so sometimes it is simply someone's accusation that something happened 16 years ago, and it's only their word. There wasn't any forensic evidence, there wasn't anything else that kind of corroborates that person. So from a defense standpoint, it's helpful that maybe pieces of evidence are not available. But from a defense standpoint, it's also could be hurtful. I mean, in terms of finding witnesses who would have been around at that point, finding tangible evidence that may be useful for a person's defense that maybe back then would have been available, but now simply doesn't exist. And so it's harder, I would say, from both standpoints, from a state standpoint in terms of proving those allegations, but it's also hard from a defense standpoint in terms of making a case with the typical avenues, which are talking to witnesses, preserving and getting evidence, and going through that. So it's a lot harder in every situation, every allegation, depending on the crime, it's going to be different.
So
I guess without being too specific.
if it's just an allegation and there may or may not have been a charge or an arrest, but nothing ever went to trial because of a lack of evidence or not being able to get witnesses or what have you, the arrest record is actually still there, right?
That's right. So if a warrant or something went out 16 years ago, that warrant or that charge is still going to be on someone's record. Now, if we're talking about someone who has come forward about something 16 years ago, typically those are called delayed outcry situations, where and so criminal charges can move forward simply with the testimony of one witness. Say you and I were in a parking garage and you came up and you hit me from behind and you ran off. And I go and tell the police, or I tell the jury, or I go and tell the police or the DA that Nia Murray came up behind me, hit me on the back of the head and stole my wallet. Okay. The law says that that's enough evidence, as long as it's credible, to move forward with that charge. Okay, so someone saying that something 16 years ago happened, in that they tell a police officer or they tell the DA or whomever about it, that can still generate charges nowadays, so long as the statute of limitations for that particular offense hasn't passed.
Wow. So based on somebody's word, somebody can actually have a charge filed against them just because you may be a credible person to say, or what they deem as credible. I can accuse you.
Yep.
I can have you arrested. And wow.
And it gets even worse, and it gets even murkier whenever there's an axe to grind, say, ex-spouses or things like that, people who have to gain things through for financial reasons, divorce reasons, things like that. Any of these allegations could have a motive behind them, and all it takes is your word saying that it happened in order for charges to be filed, for you to be drugged through the system, for your mugshot to be on the Chronicle or any of those other police reporters. And, information on the internet doesn't go away. There are public information places, websites that have people's mugshots that, even though they may be acquitted or may be expunged later on down the road, you either have to pay to get it scrubbed off the internet or you don't get it scrubbed off at all.
Wow.
So I could be in a situation where I was found not guilty. So I get arrested under one of those false allegations. I take it to trial after being photographed, fingerprinted. My mugshot is now online as someone who beats his wife, and that'll never go away. And if I try and get another job, that allegation, unfortunately, is still there. I still get those. It didn't happen, obviously, but that I have to do a lot more explaining, or maybe I don't even get a chance to explain because they go ahead. The first thing that they do is Google my name, and well, Chris McKinney is a wife beater. So it's incredibly tough for people in this situation, especially whenever the allegations are 100% false.
Unfortunately, that happens far too often.
Oh, yeah. And one of the things that a lot of times when one of our children or family members have a legal issue, first thing we do is, hey, our aunt or uncle or my cousin is an attorney, call him. But the problem with that is a lot of those attorneys, there's different types of attorneys also. So if they're a contract attorney, they have not had the experience to assist with a criminal. So could you explain the different types of attorneys, and why it's always better to get educated on who is representing you? And yes, call your family and call your friends, but don't just get Uncle Tom that Uncle Robert that is a contract attorney, or corporate attorney, and has never really practiced litigation.
Yeah, so for the most part, most attorneys, from what I've seen, they kind of know their wheelhouse. They know where they're comfortable and they know where they can help out the most. Okay, the scary ones are just like, yeah, I can help you, and then they kind of learn on the fly. So for the most part, most attorneys know whenever they're out of their depths. Okay, and so as long as they know of somebody, or they went to a CLE or something like that, a conference where they learned from other lawyers about different areas of law, well, they're just like, go talk to Chris. I hear he does all this all the time. Or I watch this guy at a conference and he seems to know what he's talking about. If he doesn't know, I'm sure he could point you in the right direction. And so it kind of goes back to, whenever I talked about the difference between general practitioners and criminal defense specialists, there is a tool for every single job. Okay. You just have to find the right tool for this particular job. And if you need a hammer for a nail job or a screwdriver for a screw job, find the tool that's going to work best for you. Don't try and use a hammer on a screw. It's going to turn out bad for everybody.
And also, a lot of people feel like if you get an attorney that is, because you can't afford an attorney, and a judge provides, selects or sends you to the organization that will assist you with a free attorney. A lot of people say, well, they're not great attorneys. Well, you know what? I beg to differ, because that's all they do. They're in that process. Am I wrong with that? Or
No.
I know you pay more money. I understand that process. I got that.
Well, so there's this old rumor that goes around is, in this country, you pay for justice, and that's not necessarily always true. Okay. me and my lawyer friends, we always joke, if we were in a different situation and we got a felony charge and we got appointed this lawyer, and this conversation always comes about based upon, somebody jumping from, say, a lawyer that we know and respect who also takes appointments. And then that person comes to us and they say, hey, I want to fire this, what they don't know to be a phenomenal lawyer, like a 5-star lawyer out of 5, not out of 10, but a 5-star lawyer with incredible caliber, gets great results for his clients, but they think that simply because that this person's an appointed lawyer, that they're not going to get this person's best. And so, we always joke that there's some lawyers down there that I would be very, very happy with. And I would trust my life with those people. But again, it's one of those, there are good lawyers and there are bad lawyers, there are good cops, there are bad cops, good teachers, bad teachers. And so it's going to be on a lawyer by lawyer basis, but the overwhelming majority of lawyers that are down there, they're there to help. Okay, they have qualifications that they meet and or exceed. They're in the courthouse every single day, and they're there to help. Okay, so I hate to be so jaded about it sometimes, but there are great lawyers out there, just like there are bad lawyers that you can hire too, though.
Quick question, and it just kind of triggered me when I asked the question about the 16-year-old allegation. If someone has a 16-year-old, a minor, that has a criminal charge or something like that against them, do they go through the same criminal attorney, or do you have to have like a juvenile criminal attorney or something like that?
Yeah, so the dividing line between juvenile cases and adult cases is going to be 17 years old. So if you are 17 years old or older, even though you are a minor for drinking purposes and a minor for being 18, you are going to be in big boy or big girl jail, big court. Okay, so you get housed with the 42-year-old aggravated robbers, the burglars, all of that. Now, if you are 16 or below, you are inside the juvenile justice system, and the juvenile justice system flows a little bit differently. It flows not out of the Code of Criminal Procedure or the Texas Penal Code. All of their procedures are based out of the Family Code, so it's completely different. And there are mechanisms in place where they are pretty much guaranteed an attorney to be appointed to them. And that is a different kind of appointed attorney. So there are attorneys that handle misdemeanors and handle felonies, but then there are a subset of those guys and girls who also handle juvenile cases, or only handle juvenile cases. And juvenile cases can be charged as misdemeanors or felonies. The consequences are going to be different, but you're going to have a more specialized appointed attorney handling those types of situations. But at the same time, you can also go out and find a lawyer that on the outside, or as they say in the jail, a free world attorney who handles juvenile matters as well.
But make sure that you differentiate when you're trying to hire an attorney.
That's right.
This is a juvenile case. This isn't an adult.
Two different sets of rules.
Gotcha. Okay.
And if I'm going to go meet with an attorney, what is it that I should bring with me concerning a legal concern?
Yeah, so typically whenever somebody calls me on the phone, I kind of get a rundown of what they're going through, and we set up the appointment. I will ask them to bring a couple things. One, any paperwork that the police gave them. And so sometimes that can be a tow slip or where a car was towed from, so I know kind of where this offense happened or where this allegation happened. I will ask them, typically in DWI cases, they may get a copy of the search warrant that was used to draw their blood, or to in house search cases, what was used to search their house. I will ask them to bring any other paperwork that the police may have given them. I'll ask for any type of court documentation that they received from the judge that they saw on the TV screen, or that tells them what their bond conditions are, when their next court date is, what their case number is, what court they're assigned to. If there's a protective order in place, I'm going to be asking them for any documentation from police, from the court, anything else they think would be relevant depending on the type of case. And so if we're talking about a white collar case, I'm going to ask them to bring some kind of bank documentation, or, if it's a theft case, receipts, anything that they think would be helpful for me to see. Now, at the same time, I've had people come in with photo albums and things like that, telling me their family histories. And I thought it was a little much. I could kind of see the relevance and kind of see that it was helpful. But people bring all sorts of things, just kind of limited to what they think would be relevant to their case.
And you also charge by the hour, correct? I mean, or how long you spent with them. So
Yes.
whatever they bring to you, it should be pertinent because you're continuously charging. The longer it takes, the more expensive the process is going to be.
Not necessarily.
Oh,
So
right.
all of our consultations that we have, and most lawyers kind of follow this path, is that all the consultation, meaning just that initial meeting to see whether or not we're going to jive with one another, it's going to be free at no cost.
Wow.
Okay.
Okay. I didn't know that.
I've heard
So
some lawyers say that they even charge for consultations, though.
say that again. I'm sorry.
I've heard some attorneys or people say that the attorneys want to charge for consultation fee. Consultation.
Some types of lawyers will, just based upon the amount of volume that they have coming in or things like that. I know some family law lawyers will charge consultation fees in between, $50 and say $200 or more to just sit down and meet with them to see if they'd be a good fit. The criminal lawyers that I know and I associate myself with, there typically isn't a consultation fee
Awesome.
because it's free. So information is free, kind of like why we're here today, just to give good information so that people can make informed decisions.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Do your homework, do your research. Don't trust old Uncle Joe because he knew something about law and told you what happened or how he did his case, 10 years ago, and that kind of thing. Do your own research and make sure that you check properly, that you vet the people that you're going to be working with, because if this is a criminal case and your livelihood, your life is on the line here, you don't want to go by somebody that hadn't practiced law in the last 15 years or hasn't gone to trial or any of that kinds of stuff. Do your due diligence and ask questions, ask for referrals, look them up. See if they're even still licensed in the state of Texas to practice law, because you'd be surprised at how many people are still kind of out there, or if they've had complaints filed against them or whatever. You kind of need to know those kinds of things. So Chris, thank you very, very much for taking the time this afternoon.
Awesome.
All of our legal service workshops are volunteer attorneys that actually do come and again, take time out of their busy schedule from their practices to provide this information to the community. And we absolutely appreciate it wholeheartedly. We cannot thank you guys enough for the services that you provide to the community, the information that you help us get out there to the community. It is very informative. It is very impactful. So thank you very, very much. On behalf of the entire A Month of Service Partnership, we thank all of our participants for continuing to join us and tune in to receive this information. Again, we ask that you forward it along, share it with other family members, neighbors, co-workers, whomever that may find this information to be beneficial as well. Again, it is being recorded. We will send the link out. You can also go back to the Amos Houston Facebook page to see all of our live presentations, as well as I will include the link to the criminal record expunge, or make sure I'm getting it right. Who's expunged? Which one is what's expunged versus
Expunged and non-disclosed.
expunged versus non-disclosed for
Juvenile.
for juveniles and for adults. Because we still get a lot of questions and calls about that, where people want to know, if I've got a criminal charge or an arrest from 16 years ago, what do I do about it? How do I get it taken off my record? So there are still services that are out there that can help you guys do that for free as well. So I'll include that link to where to go back to watch that recording so that you guys can share that information as well. Again, thank you very much, Ms. Myra. As always, we want to, let's see, what do we got coming up this week? Tomorrow? We've got our Money, Health, and Wealth. This is our debt management presentation that's going to be tomorrow from 4 to 6 p.m. And on Thursday from 1 to 3, our handling inherited property. So if you've got any issues or probate concerns about clearing title for inherited property, you don't want to miss that presentation as well. So thank you all very much. Oh,
Hey,
Ms.
Nia, before we go, I'm just reminding everyone, we're having coffee and conversation the fourth Tuesday of this month on
27th.
June 27th, from 10 to 12 at Southwest Multi-Service Center. So guys, we're going to have professionals there that are going to give you information, different department representatives about, you know, what they offer, how they can assist you. We want to make sure that we meet with all the community leaders there. And if you feel like, hey, I'm not a community leader, yes, you are, because if you live in a neighborhood, you're a community leader because you're going and moving and working in that neighborhood. Guys, know that you're not alone, and Coffee and Conversation is with the City of Houston Department of Neighborhoods and our partners, and we're talking about just having conversation with you and finding out what are your majority concerns and what do you need. Thanks, everyone.
All right, I will be sending out the list of all of the June presentations that we've got that are scheduled for the rest of this month. We do take our break in July. We don't have anything that's scheduled for the month of July, but then we do also then resume. Yeah, we had to get that out there beforehand. People ask, well, I don't see anything on the calendar for July. What happened to all the July meetings? So we take a break. So, but again, all of the recordings will still be available for those who want to go back to watch the previously recorded session. So with that being said, thank y'all very much. You all have a safe remainder of your afternoon and your travels. It's getting a little cloudy again out there, so I assume we've got more rain and whatnot that's on the way. So you guys be careful in your travels. You all have a wonderful afternoon, and we will see you all next time. Thanks again, Chris.
Thank you all.
Great
All right.
job.
Take
Thank you,
care.
Chris.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you, Monica. Thank you, Heather.